you, Alan. Thank you, Suzanne, for inviting us along today. Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Andy Glyde. I'm the Business Development Director for Construction within EMEA. And what I'd like to do this morning is just run you through Bentley's view on BIM and Integrated Project Delivery, IPD. When I start with these presentations, I just always bring this description of BIM because it will run through the presentation today that the BIM is a process of generating and managing building data during its entire life cycle. And we're always asked by architects, by structural engineers, mechanical and electrical engineers and the construction companies that are out there, what does BIM do for me? Well, the thing about BIM is at this present time, the traditional approach, and I think from the discussions I had with Alan yesterday, you may have already seen this from the other vendors that have stood up and presented to you. The traditional approach is using 2D drawings and bits of paper. The data is fragmented and the industry loses a lot of information with lost data and not being able to manage and find that information. There's no bi-directional workflow between the viewers and the reviewers and the designers and the people that actually need to access that information. And obviously there's no match between 2D and the reality of 5D, which is obviously the 3D space, and then time and money, which we'll come on to in a little while. The process as it stands at the moment doesn't allow good decision making, and the support for that isn't there in that traditional approach. And we in the construction industry, we waste an awful lot of time looking for information and trying to assess what that information is doing for us. And there's a NIST report, and Alan mentioned to me yesterday that you may or may not have seen this, but if you haven't seen it, then I would look for it on the web. We have copies and we can put it into the pack. But this explains where with inadequate interoperability between the software that the construction industry is using, the amount of time and the amount of money that we are actually wasting by not using the processes and the technology that we now have available to us. So when we're talking to companies like yourselves about BIM, one thing I will say as a software vendor this morning is the technology is the least important aspect of this whole process. What you really need to do is if you are looking at technology, it's got to be interoperable. It must allow you to talk to the other expert systems that are in the industry, because there are an awful lot of them. And when you're on a major construction or any construction project, you will find that different companies are using different types of software because it best suits their requirements. And it must support, the BIM technology must support the whole process from conceptual design all the way through to demolition, and not just part of it. So process and standards. In England, and I'm not sure the standard situation in Ireland, but all of the projects that we're working on at this present time are based around BS 1192. And that looks at the BIM and the IPD process in a federated manner. And I'll come on to the difference between our federated approach. And luckily, or as it worked out, BS 1192 describes the process, and it perfectly matches the way Bentley actually look at the construction industry and how we manage that. And the documentation clearly, you must document, clearly to avoid misinterpretation. And I think the most important aspect of the BIM process is the people that are involved. When you're looking at implementing a BIM strategy within the company, it's the education and the process of the education with the people that you're employing is most important. You must explain why. So it must be driven really from the top of the organisation right the way through. So you're explaining exactly why you're implementing a BIM project and what the company is going to benefit from it. So if we look at life cycle BIM, which is really where Bentley excel, and we have lots of user cases that are now implementing this approach. The Federated BIM model, which, as I mentioned, BS 1192 talks to you about. The key areas really initially are obviously design, the benefits for the design, visualization, material scheduling, clash detection, life cycle analysis, and that model is then passed through to the building team. And again, it's not just about design, it's the whole life cycle. It's passing that information then through to procurement and construction. Operation and maintenance. I was talking to one of my colleagues this morning about the Olympics in London and the way that the fire brigade are using the BIM models that have been created to then look at health and safety and evacuation processes. So we are looking at, the information is created, and I'll show a quick graph in a second. That graph shows you that as the time moves forward, the use of the BIM model, the use of the integrated project delivery scenario becomes more and more valuable to the project, to the owner-operators. And there are many discussion groups, one of which obviously we're here to talk to you about today, that are looking from a government perspective on how BIM and IPD will help the construction industry in the major projects that we're involved with. So everyone can benefit. Design, construction, the owner-operators, and obviously the governance is very important. And I won't spend too much time on that because I think I've covered a lot of that already. So if you take anything away from today, BIM is not a product. Okay? Some vendors will say to you, if you buy this product, you'll be doing BIM. I'm sorry, but that's not the case. BIM is a process, and it's the most important part is that process and making sure you get that right. So we look at the federated BIM environment. We call it Big BIM and Little BIM. We've been talking about Little BIM, the single building model, for a long time. And here you can see architectural, discipline, structural, and M&E. And what tends to happen in the single building model environment is the architect and the structural and the M&E develop a model for their own use initially, and at some point that model is then brought together using other products that are out in the market for clashing and ensuring that model then fits together. The issue with that really is that there's a lot more to the construction of a project, and we talk about the intelligent city, but the intelligent project infrastructure includes a whole host of different environments: land management, water and sewage, energy, human services. All of those things need to be considered in that environment as far as BIM is concerned. So as the data is developed through the life cycle, you're looking at the design, the build, and the operate. And that, even if you're talking about a two-story building or a large development like the Olympics in London, that information is generated in various manners. You have GIS, you have land parcel, you'll have road and transport, you'll have the building that sits on that particular part of the site. And all of that information has to be brought together and managed in a way that everybody can access that. So really that's one of the environments that Bentley allow you to manage that information and manage that data. And to be honest with you, from our perspective, it doesn't matter what product you're using, because the interoperability of these solutions is key. So you could be using AutoCAD, you could be using Revit, you could be using our MicroStation BIM suites. It's not a major issue as far as managing the BIM data. And I was talking to Alan and a couple of gentlemen this morning before we started. I'm not sure if I like the acronym BIM. It shouldn't necessarily be building information modelling. It could be road information modelling, bridge information, sewer, water, land, and many more. What we're talking really here about this morning is integrated project delivery, or IPD. But BIM is still gaining traction in the industry, which is good for everyone.